When it comes to Ubisoft, you likely have some expectations, be it good, bad, or somewhere in between. They've certainly carved out a reputation in the open world genre, and when diving into a new game, especially one set in a beloved universe like Star Wars, expectations can be all over the place. In Star Wars Outlaws, Ubisoft has delivered a game that, while not without its quirks, manages to capture the essence of the galaxy far, far away. Still, there's a lot to unpack here, so let's talk about what works, what doesn't, and why this game just might scratch that Star Wars itch, if you know where to look. Star Wars Outlaws is the first open-world Star Wars game, so there's already a lot riding on this. But I think it's one of those things where people are going to find themselves enjoying the game the same way many people still enjoyed Hogwarts Legacy for just being an open-world Harry Potter game, despite all its flaws. Although with Star Wars, it may not be quite to the same degree. If you've already been off Star Wars for years, this isn't going to reignite your love for it. And sure, it's still got that typical Ubisoft jank that you've come to expect. You might even say it's McClunky. But I think what's here is a pretty decent package, and all the bets they placed are played pretty safely. Star Wars Outlaws is set shortly after Han is placed in Carbonite, placing it between the events of Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. The story follows Kay Vess, a clever and resourceful scoundrel who is trying to carve out a life for herself in the criminal underworld. Alongside her loyal companion Nix, Kay navigates dangerous, seedy underworlds filled with smugglers, bounty hunters, and crime syndicates. Driven by the hope of securing one big score that could change her fate, Kay takes on a high-risk job that thrusts her into the crosshairs of powerful enemies, including those syndicates she has a bad reputation with and the Galactic Empire. To survive, she must outsmart her adversaries, make uneasy alliances, and embrace her role as an outlaw in a galaxy where trust is a rare commodity and danger lurks around every corner. Amberly Gonzalez voices Kay, and she and the rest of the cast, and the writing of course, really know how to make all the characters fit so naturally into this world and its lore. It's like they've always belonged. However, I won't be getting into any story spoilers, but I will say this. Though I still ended up enjoying the story and the character dynamics, and was still able to buy it by the end, I still kind of wish it was fleshed out a bit more. There were moments where it has heart, and I'm not asking to bloat the game with unnecessary fluff, but at the same time, just a few more would have made so much of a difference because it feels like we barely get to spend much time with those other characters outside of your main crew. And even in your main crew, it's not as much as it could have been. Like ND5 for example, if he had accompanied you more during missions where there's more banter and whatnot, it could have developed it a lot further. The game does a decent job with flashbacks, providing glimpses into Kay's past that add context to her motivations, but again, these moments feel limited. A few more scenes or interactions could have added depth to a character and allowed players to connect more deeply with her journey. As it stands, the narrative hits the necessary beats to keep the story moving forward and keeping you invested, but it leaves you wishing for just a bit more. More time with the characters, and more exploration of their backstories. And while it ultimately was enough to do the job, it could have been better with a few extra moments sprinkled in. Though, there are some memorable moments, especially between Kay and Nix.
Ooh, fancy.
There's also been a lot of talk about Kay's character model and facial animation. Honestly, it's not really a big deal to me, and I don't think it's a big deal to most people, but it is probably something that you will come to notice, especially when it occasionally switches between an in-engine cutscene to a pre-rendered cinematic. It might come off as a bit jarring to some, but definitely wasn't really an issue for me because the story, the characters, and the voice acting held it together really well. I enjoyed a lot of the stealth sections, which aside from Assassin's Creed Mirage, has been a breath of fresh air seeing it make a proper return in a Ubisoft game. While it's not perfect, it's got a lot of the same DNA from an Assassin's Creed game, where you can sneak around by crouching behind walls, crawling through grass, stealth taking down enemies, whistling to gain their attention, or sending Nix to distract them while you scurry right past them. Nix can also be used to hit a button on the other side of a shield to deactivate it, or to attack an enemy, giving you the perfect chance to strike, or even just grabbing something from a high ledge, or pickpocketing someone. This is the type of stealth that they've always been great at, and I think that they initially abandoned it because perhaps they figured that it would be too difficult in an open world setting. But this proves that it still works. You just need to design more locations like several smaller levels in a larger map. Though, while writing this, I've seen some more negative impressions from other reviewers, and honestly, I'm not sure what they were expecting out of this. Maybe I have a much higher tolerance for this sort of thing when it comes to Ubisoft games now, but for me, this pretty much hit all the expectations I had for it. It didn't surpass it, but it definitely hit it. Part of me wonders if it's related to them scrambling to get a review out, since many had said that they hadn't received codes until about 6 days before embargo, and were feeling much more burnt out and were just generally tired of the open world formula. I mean, listen, I'll admit that I am too, and it did start to feel more repetitive the more I played. Like when you do a job for a syndicate. It often results in infiltrating an Imperial base and knocking out stormtroopers, using a data spike, avoiding or sabotaging alarms, crawling through vents, knocking out stormtroopers, slicing a door, sabotaging alarms. You get where I'm going with this? It did very much feel like rinse and repeat. However, while I would have liked for there to have been a greater variety of mission types, I think I'm more forgiving of this because Ubisoft games aren't really meant to be marathoned. They're meant to be taken in strides. That's part of the reason why Assassin's Creed Valhalla got so much flack when it came out. Did Valhalla have its issues? Yes, of course. But when I finally got around to playing it, I enjoyed it far more than I was led to believe. Mostly because I did it incrementally. This one, on the other hand, was different, because it's nowhere near as long. Had it been any longer, it would have likely outstayed its welcome, and I generally went into it with a different set of expectations compared to maybe some others. But to add to this, part of what could have contributed to this repetitiveness was the fact that not only do you have to often visit several Imperial bases that generally all look the same, but it also has a lot of scripted moments where Kay gets caught and all the alarms are sounded, needing to blast your way through, which can often cheapen the use for stealth. And like I've said before, the smaller locations made this oddly feel more like a linear game with open world elements, similar to how the Jedi games are with its hub worlds, except a lot bigger. And so the environments and the exploration feels much less bloated and more lived in, especially when zipping across on your speeder. In the Outer Rim, there are 4 systems you visit, starting with Toshara in the Toshal system. Toshara is a brand new moon created for the game, featuring varied biomes, rocky canyons, and lively settlements, and acts as a sort of hub for criminal activity. Kijimi is the cold, mountainous view we saw in Rise of Skywalker, known for its criminal underworld and black market dealings. Akiva is a jungle planet. It's very wet and rainy. And Tatooine, well, I'm sure you're familiar with that one already.
I don't like sand.
I actually like how it only has a few select planets that really allows for them to create worlds that feel alive. Unlike in Starfield, where it might have 1,000 planets, but what good are they when most of them are procedurally generated? Of course, Starfield isn't a good metric to base this on, but if you enjoyed Starfield for all that it was, despite all its flaws, I'm going to say that you're probably going to actually enjoy this more. Especially when you see some familiar faces like Jabba, or Bib Fortuna, or the legendary Salacious B. Crumb. One semi-criticism that is also somewhat a positive, depending on how you look at it, is that it's not always clear what you can and can't climb on. In the newer Assassin's Creeds, you can climb on pretty much anything, but here it's a little difficult to discern what's climbable and what isn't, which is why I am someone who actually sometimes appreciates the yellow paint, especially in games like this. I would say it adds a layer of accessibility, which this game thankfully has a lot of, including even when you're using a data spike, which is this game's form of lockpicking. Though honestly, I didn't love how it worked, but over time I got used to it, and it was nice being able to toggle the visual UI helper. Same thing with when you're slicing. They allow you to swap the glyphs with numbers, something that while I didn't need, I'm sure would help a lot of people. Though again, as much as I like Wordle, slicing also felt pretty repetitive after a while. From the characters, to the story, the environments, the atmosphere, the music, which sounds like a blend that's reminiscent of their Assassin's Creed scores, and even the UI, Ubisoft seems to understand this time period and knows how to nail that Star Wars vibe. And with the UI, even from a design perspective, it's done well. The font choice is nice and easy to read, and the navigation between the tabs and the menus is actually surprisingly simple. There isn't a skill tree with tons of branches with incredibly minor upgrades that make the whole thing more overwhelming than rewarding. It's more ability based, which you can earn by unlocking conditions that can be tracked by following the progression. But even that doesn't add a whole lot. It only gives you maybe a slight edge, which in this game's defense, you don't really need much more. Want to be in a syndicate's good graces? Well, between the Pike Syndicate, Crimson Dawn, the Hutt Cartel, and the Ishiga clan, you can take several jobs that help raise your reputation with them. Reputation is important for visiting certain controlled regions where they may shoot on sight, or worse, hunt you down. It also helps when visiting vendors from those factions, as they grant you certain discount rates, depending on how high or low your reputation is with them. And if you're on their good side, or better yet max it out, you'll be granted some pretty sweet rewards. Careful though, you can't please everyone. Pretty often, by the end of a quest, you are asked to side with one faction or another, and the one that you side against could lower your reputation, while the other could increase it. So play your cards right, just like in Sabacc. Though, don't overthink it too much either, because as far as I know, siding with certain syndicates has little to do with the main story and its outcome, and you could always try selling some data to increase it too. Sabacc, I'm sure you're aware, is the card game in this galaxy, and it's very much ingrained in this universe. I've mentioned this before in previous reviews, but I can't say I'm much of a fan of card games, especially ones like work went. But Sabacc surprised me because as daunting as it comes off at first, with all its seemingly complicated rules and symbols, as you play, you begin to get the hang of it, and I actually kind of had fun. The game also features fathier races that can be betted on and won at every turn, so long as you know what you're doing. Hint, the races are always rigged and the right intel will always give you an edge. And there are also some mini arcade games there too, which are always fun to try your hand at. Aside from the abilities and reputation tabs, you've also got equipment where you can change your loadout, equip blaster upgrades, and view your tools and inventory. And don't think your blaster and outfit are the only customizable features. In vehicles, you also have the ability to equip upgrades and change the appearance of your speeder and your ship. In your loadout, here you can equip different outfits and mix and match different variations of your jacket, belt, and pants. While a lot of these items are nothing more than cosmetics, there are some that do provide some helpful bonus stats. And don't worry, don't like the look? You can always change the appearance to make it look like one of the other items. Transmogs for the win. Charms also give you slight bonuses as well. You can equip up to 5 of these, but they're pretty hard to come by. Nyx also has his own upgrades, and with certain treats that can be found at specific vendors, it can also add some small advantages there too. Your blaster is divided into several components. Plasma, your standard firing type, Ion, essentially your electric fire rate that can be useful against shields, and Power, which charges up and delivers a powerful blast or explosion in a particular area. That's kind of what makes the combat feel more responsive. Being able to swap between and strategize which is best for a particular enemy type keeps it a little less monotonous. Each of these have various types of their own that can be equipped in your menus and upgraded at a bench on your ship. And yes, you can also change the appearance of this too, but it's not as elaborate as the lightsaber build in the Jedi games. Also, while we're still on the subject of menus, unless you're playing on an ultra-wide display where you just happen to like the constant cinematic look, go into settings and change it to fill screen, because for some reason it's defaulted to 21:9 instead of the traditional 16:9. And while you're at it, you also might as well change the subtitle size to small or even off if you're not a fan of them. Honestly, I did expect there to be more bugs and performance issues, but there actually weren't a ton, if any at all. For me, performance-wise on the Series X, there were no noticeable frame drops or stutter or anything worth of noting. And when I spoke of jank, it was mostly some of the movement and the animations, but that was about it. But there was one bug during this one scene here, but I think with a quick reload, it just fixes itself. Sure, things like this can ruin the emotional impact with a scene, but you may not necessarily get the same bug in the same place. Plus, I started playing it during the early access period, so I'm sure with a day one patch and other future patches, it'll all be ironed out. But I can only speak for the Series X's performance, nothing else. However, I am aware, and you should be too, according to a statement made by a Ubisoft representative to Games Radar, they said, quote, "On August 27th, our teams identified an issue where some PS5 players were playing on a previous version of the game. We quickly deployed an update and informed affected players to ensure their game was updated to the latest version and advised that they begin a new save to avoid additional issues and progression blockers. We have followed up with the affected PS5 players today to inform them we have provided an in-game Trailblazer trinket as well as 100 Ubisoft Connect units to redeem for in-game rewards, for example, to make the return to the Outer Rim a little more special." End quote. Oh, there we go. There it is. Ubisoft, I was beginning to forget why people hate you so much, but thank you for reminding me. You see, practices like this are horrible and damaging to the games themselves, because while this doesn't affect how I view this game inherently, it is definitely a large factor that plays into people not wanting to continue spending on your games. Obviously, microtransactions are one thing and aren't unique to Ubisoft, but this is essentially robbing people of that extra money they may have paid for this. Personally, I don't think purchasing anything other than a standard edition is worth it, but through Ubisoft Plus, it kind of makes sense. Though if I didn't review games, I'd probably wait for this to go on sale. But as someone who does and always wants to keep up with them, I figured the best way to play this is through their service for this month alone and then purchase it later down the road when it goes on sale. Did the same thing with Prince of Persia earlier this year, and probably will do the same thing with Assassin's Creed Shadows. Ultimately, Star Wars Outlaws is an okay game that will run you about 20 hours. My save file sits around 18, and for the most part, it captures the spirit of the galaxy we all love. However, it's not without its flaws. It's not a groundbreaking entry, but it can still be an enjoyable one. It might also be
A little rough around the edges.
and may not quite live up to Jedi Fallen Order or Survivor, but there is a decent story to be told and several detailed planets to explore. But if you're on the fence, maybe wait it out until there's a sale or try it through Ubisoft Plus. But if you're a diehard fan or just want to experience a new chapter in a galaxy far, far away, give it a go with a grain of sand and an eye on your credits.